Water shaped early human life. It also shaped early human loss. The first villages often rose near water. Rivers gave drinking water. Rivers gave fish. Rivers fed crops. Rivers became travel routes. But rivers also took children. The danger was quiet. It did not growl like an animal. It looked like a normal shore. It looked like a calm pond. It looked like a shallow ditch. It looked like a well beside a home. Then a foot slipped. Then the bank broke. Then a small body went under. The highest danger sat in early childhood. It was worst from 1 to 4 years. That age can walk. That age can run. That age can wander. That age cannot judge depth. That age cannot read current. That age cannot control panic. Adults were often busy. They worked at the water's edge. They washed pots there. They cleaned food there. They pulled nets there. They filled jars there. They mixed clay there. Children played near the same place. The same space held work and play. The same space held life and risk. A drowning event was a race. It was a race against minutes. A child could inhale water fast. A child could stop breathing fast. A child could lose strength fast. Cold water made it worse. Panic made it worse. Mud made it worse. Weeds made it worse. A sudden deep hole made it worse. A strong current made it worse. Early people learned one hard lesson. Rescue could create a second victim. A rescuer could drown too. That risk shaped their choices. It shaped their rules. It shaped their methods. The first rule was simple. Reach before you go in. A long stick became a tool. A branch could save a life. A bamboo pole could save a life. An oar could save a life. The rescuer did not stand tall. They often lay flat on the bank. That spread body weight. That reduced slipping. That added reach. They pushed the pole forward. They aimed for the child's hands. If the child could grab it, the pull began. If the child could not grab it, the rescuer tried to grab the child. They aimed for the wrist. They aimed for the upper arm. They aimed for the armpit. They pulled in one steady motion. They avoided sudden jerks. Jerks could break a grip. Jerks could pull the rescuer in. The second rule was also simple. Throw what can be grabbed. Many early communities had rope or rope-like cord. Rope was daily technology. It tied boats. It tied animals. It dragged wood. It held nets. It also served rescue. A rope could be tossed. A vine could be tossed. A woven net could be dragged across the surface. A loop could be made fast. A knot could make a handhold. These methods were imperfect. They needed luck and timing, but they could work. They also kept the rescuer safer than a blind jump into water. The third rule was teamwork. Many rescues were not solo. People formed a human chain. One person anchored on firm ground. Another held that person's waist. Another held the next person. The last person reached toward the child. The chain reduced collapse. The chain added pulling power. The chain helped on weak banks. It required no tools. It required only coordination. It was a natural group response. It was built from repeated experience. It was built from repeated loss. Boats changed rescue options. River cultures often had small boats. They used rafts too. They used simple canoes too. A boat could reach faster than a runner on mud. A boat could also carry the child. Rescuers could extend an oar from the boat. They could hook clothing. They could pull the child to the side. They could lift the child into the hull. Even then, balance mattered. Too many people could capsize the boat. So experienced adults took the lead. Others stayed back. They watched. They steadied. They made space. Sometimes people still went into the water. That happened when nothing else worked. It was the most dangerous option. A panicked child could grab a rescuer's neck. Both could go under. Skilled rescuers learned safer approaches. They tried to come from behind. They tried to hold under the armpits. They tried to keep the child's face up. They tried to kick toward the bank. This was not written science. It was practical knowledge. It was learned by doing. It was learned by seeing what fails. Rescue did not end at the shore. A child could be out of water and still be dying. The next minute still mattered. Early people had no modern CPR system. They had no oxygen tanks. They had no intensive care. They had limited medicine. Still, they did some useful things. They cleared mud from the mouth. They cleared weeds from the mouth. They wiped the nose. They checked if the chest moved. They listened for breath. They watched for coughing. Coughing was a good sign. It meant air was moving. They often placed the child on the side. That position helped fluids drain. That position reduced choking. Warmth came next. Cold kills quietly. Children cool fast. Small bodies lose heat fast. Wet cloth steals heat fast. So people removed wet wraps. They dried the skin. They wrapped the child in dry cloth. They used animal skins in some places. They placed the child near a fire. They tried to avoid thick smoke. Smoke could worsen coughing. They rubbed the limbs, they rubbed the back, they tried to restore warmth and circulation. This was not superstition. This was survival care. It was often the best care available. Then came watchfulness. Early people noticed delayed danger. A child could seem better at noon. The child could worsen at night. Fever could rise later. Harsh cough could appear later. Breathing could become fast and shallow later. Today we know possible reasons. Water can irritate the lungs. Dirty water can seed infection. Inflammation can swell small airways. Early people did not know the biology. They knew the pattern. So families watched the child for hours. Sometimes they watched all night. They listened for fast breathing. They watched for chest pulling in. They watched for blue lips. They watched for confusion or extreme sleepiness. They knew these signs could mean death. Supportive care differed by region. Warm water was common. Small sips could calm a child. Herbal teas existed in many traditions. They could reduce discomfort. They could not replace antibiotics. Steam from warm water was used in some places. It could ease tightness. It could comfort. Food was often given carefully. Vomiting was a risk. Aspiration was a risk too. So caregivers acted cautiously. They aimed for rest. They aimed for warmth. They aimed for time. Those limits were harsh. Some children recovered fully. Some children worsened later. Severe lung injury could be fatal. Pneumonia could be fatal. Fever could be fatal. In the ancient world, many illnesses were fatal. Drowning could also trigger later death. So prevention mattered more than treatment. Prevention became habit. Prevention became social rule. Small children were kept close. They were carried on backs. They were held by older siblings. Older siblings became watchers. Wells were sometimes covered. Pits were sometimes blocked. Canal edges were sometimes marked. Brush fences were sometimes built. Thorns were sometimes placed as barriers. Work areas were sometimes separated from play areas. These steps were not universal. They depended on materials, they depended on time, they depended on culture. Swimming skill also mattered. In many water cultures, children learned early. They learned in shallow water. They learned near adults. They learned through play. They used floating wood. They used gourds in some regions. They held a boat side. Their early skill could reduce some risk. It did not erase risk. Floodwater can overpower swimmers. Cold water can disable swimmers. Wells are not like rivers. Night is not like day. Panic can defeat skill. So drowning remained a threat. Now comes the hardest question. What % of children drowned in early civilization? A precise global number is not available. The reason is simple. Early societies kept few death records. Many deaths were never documented. Most burials have no cause written down. Bones rarely show drowning clearly. Drowning leaves no unique skeletal signature in most cases, so archaeology cannot count drowning cases directly. That makes a single ancient worldwide percentage impossible. Still, we can say careful things. Child mortality was very high in many pre-modern societies. Many children died before age 5. The main causes were disease and malnutrition. Diarrhea was deadly. Respiratory infection was deadly. Malaria was deadly in many regions. Birth complications were deadly too. Accidents were not always the top cause. Yet accidents could be major in specific settings. Drowning was one such accident. Its share would change by landscape. Desert groups faced less open water. Their drowning share was likely lower. River valley groups faced constant water. Their drowning share was likely higher. Wetland and delta groups faced hidden channels and ponds. Their drowning share could be higher. Farming groups dug canals and wells. Those added hazards near homes. Boat cultures lived on water daily. That raised exposure. It also raised skill. So risk could move both ways. Age matters the most. Toddlers are the peak group. They move fast. They fall silently. They cannot self-rescue. They cannot shout clearly. They can drown in very little water. Older children have better judgment. Older children may swim better. So the curve peaks early and then falls. That is true today. It likely was true then. Modern data can only give comparison. It cannot give ancient measurement. It can show how risk behaves. In some modern rural, water-rich settings, drowning can become a leading killer for ages 1 to 4. In some studies, it can make up a large fraction of deaths in that age band. Sometimes it can reach double digits. In extreme settings, it can rise even higher. But those numbers are modern. They reflect modern reporting and modern contexts. They should not be copied as ancient fact. They only show what can happen when water is everywhere and supervision is hard. So the responsible conclusion is mixed. Early people had real rescue methods. They used reach tools first. They used throw tools when possible. They used teamwork often. They used boats when boats existed. After rescue, they cleared the airway as best they could. They restored warmth. They watched closely for hours. They offered comfort with simple care. They also faced strict medical limits. Some children died despite rescue. Some died because help came too late. Some died later from lung illness. Some died from cold shock. Prevention therefore became the strongest defense. It became daily practice. It became community memory. This is the early history of a quiet emergency. It happened beside ordinary work. It happened without warning. It forced fast action. It forced group coordination. It forced careful watching afterward. It also shaped parenting norms. It shaped settlement habits. It shaped simple safety rules. Water gave life to civilization. Water also demanded a price, and that price was often paid in silence.